So plenty of toing and froing around whether the issue of President Jacob Zuma appearing in court was in fact discussed at the ANC's NEC. Just give us an update for our viewers who are tuning in for the first time.
We did clarify matters that relate to persons who may be accused and how our own structures might want to posture or relate with such instances. And we're quite explicit there. We had issued a statement yesterday that said that should members elect or choose to support accused persons who happen to be members of the ANC, it could be President Jacob Zuma when he goes to court, or any other person. They do so in their own personal, individual capacity, and they will not necessarily be using organizational paraphernalia to be doing such. Actually, we're quite explicit. We spoke about a number of issues, including making sure that there is the strengthening of the Integrity Committee. Actually, the NEC directed the National Working Committee to make sure that it processes the terms of reference that must guide the work of the Integrity Committee and table those for ratification at the next sitting of the NEC.
So, of course, this former President Jacob Zuma is not just any accused person. He is the former president of the ANC, the former state president as well.
Yes.
So, when it comes to the former president's massive support bases in areas like KwaZulu-Natal, what will the ANC be doing there to ensure that those members adhere to what decision was taken at this NEC?
Well, the ANC has communicated a position of principle through a special resolution taken at the National Executive Committee, which is the highest decision-making body in between conferences, to make a clarion call to its membership on how it is supposed to relate to such instances. I mean, for instance, you might not be able to bar people from going to court, but what you had said is that it should not be them with the paraphernalia of the ANC, because when that happens, it might as well send a message that this support outside courts and all of that has been coordinated formally from within structures of the ANC. That is what the NEC was actually cautioning against.
So when it comes to issues like, I mean, we're in the year of the elections now.
Yes.
Where the party is going to be launching widespread campaigns around preparing for next year's national election.
Yes.
Did the NEC take any decisions in terms of what the former president's role will be in campaigning?
Well, you will agree with me through acclamation, of course, that we do have a decision that former presidents and the former Secretary General, Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe, former President Thabo Mbeki, former President Jacob Zuma, would, if they find space, be part of the campaign trail. We must also agree that one of the principles that has been emphasized is that when you are accused, you are not necessarily guilty. You must be given an opportunity to appear before a court of law and put forward your own defense. We must also agree that the laws of this country apply exactly the same way to all other individuals. So President Zuma is innocent until proven otherwise. And the NEC has of course, conveyed its own message or at its own request to former leaders of the ANC to participate in its own campaign work. Because this ANC belongs to them as well. It belongs to the people of South Africa.
Do we also agree that there is this assertion that former President Jacob Zuma is now associated with this shadow state, with this state capture saga, which we know is now being ventilated in the courts? And is that something that the ANC, going into these very important elections, in places like the Western Cape as well, is that something that the ANC is willing to risk?
Well, I can assure you that when the NEC said, it also did discuss, zoom into issues of state capture, understanding that there could be some from within its ranks who might be called to appear before the commission dealing with the state of capture. And that we expect that as that happens, it will happen within the most lawful process as possible. People will also be accorded their own rights. They will appear and also ventilate and say their version and all of that. What is important is we must appreciate that when people are accused or are called before commissions, they make time to appear before those and say their side of the story. That is very important, so that some of these things happen without any delays, you know, so that we could all move on with our lives. So the ANC is quite serious in terms of dealing with its own positioning in society, so that it could become the real apex of acceptable conventions in society.
Mr. Mabe, what will be the extent of the governing party's support for the former president as he begins his corruption trial?
Well, we have clarified this matter before, to the extent that the governing party does not have a decision coming out of conference on such. Hence, the governing party has taken a decision to advise its members on how they should be conducting themselves when they deal or attend to this matter.
So the extent of the support is that the president will have his day in court, but he is innocent until proven otherwise?
Yes, and that where members go to court, they are going there in their own individual capacity.
I mean, it's a difficult balancing act, isn't it? Especially because it's an election year. So the ANC is trying to redeem itself of the Zuma legacy. That's what some political analysts are saying. While at the same time trying to balance its support of innocent until proven otherwise.
Well, I don't think that would call it balance. I mean, a subscription to a universal principle is not a balancing act. You know, the ANC is an organization that also respects the right of individuals. You know, I mean, we were part of the 1996 trajectory that brought about the Constitution of the Republic. And in that Constitution, there's a Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights clearly express those things. So we are unable, we are not in a position to amend the Constitution of the Republic and also go against acceptable universal principles.
Yeah, be that as it may, the former president is not an ordinary South African, is he? He is a former president of the governing party and of the state. And the question, I suppose, is if he's going to go on the campaign trail on behalf of the ANC, given what he is now associated with, this shadow state capture, is that something the ANC will support?
Well, I've said this point to you, and you are raising a point of the president not being an ordinary South African and all of that. But you will agree with me that when he appears in court, he appears in a court that any other South African would appear in. I'm just saying there are no courts that would be specially designed or made for that purpose. So let's be fair to this process. Let's allow these processes to unfold. President Zuma himself, I'm sure he's fully cooperating with the processes that are ensuing, and will also have his own opportunity together with his defense team to ventilate and also place their own side on record. I don't think that that should be the matter of the ANC. The ANC has conveyed its position. The ANC has communicated its message to its structures and its members on how it expects them to conduct themselves during this period.
So, going into this issue of elections again, is the ANC at all concerned in terms of its campaigning ahead of next year's national elections? Is it business as usual, or are there perhaps extraordinary measures that are going to be put in place as it goes on the campaign trail?
Well, the ANC is extraordinary measures that are being put in place are to make sure that we win the greater confidence and support of the people of South Africa. So elections have become a permanent feature on our own agenda. In all our meetings, when we sit, we discuss elections. You'll also know that we now have a full-time head of elections in the form of Comrade Fikile Mbalula at head office. Our national elections team is hard at work. All our election structures are working. Actually, one of the things we took as a decision is that the PLC, the liaison committee that deals with political parties at the IEC should also begin to encourage the IEC to massively go on a drive to make sure that they get all addresses of legitimate persons who are supposed to participate in the forthcoming general elections.
All right, well, thanks very much for coming into studio. The ANC spokesperson, Pule Mabe, joining us here on the lead. The ANC NEC saying that members can show support for those implicated in state capture, but not in ANC colours.